Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining me this evening in our sanctuary. Our service begins tonight on page 120 with the candle lighting blessings, and I would like to invite our former president, board host tonight, Jillian, to pop out from behind the curtain and come light our Shabbat candles for us. Shabbat surprise. What? Okay. Amen. Thank you. As these Shabbat candles give light to those who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. We turn to Lecha Dodi on pages 138 and 139. As is our custom, we sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And when we reach verse 9, I invite you, if you're able, to rise and face the door and imagine the Sabbath as a beautiful bride coming into our sanctuary, coming down the aisle to join us here on Shabbat. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pene Shabbat nekabela Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad Hishmianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'litila Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pene Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pene Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki hi mekor habracha מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי שיר דברי. כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני העם סגולה. בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. You may be seated. And now, we've opened our hearts with our opening nigun. We lit our Shabbat candles and welcomed in the Shabbat bride. And now we're ready to segue into our evening service with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayedecho bet Yisrael, bagala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen. Yehesh merabba mevarach ve'alamul almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'ale v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma ve'imeru amen. On page 146, we find the Baruch Hu. Please prepare yourself for the call to worship. Yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da da da. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach may be seated. And we can continue together on page 149. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my sibling, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my sibling, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 150. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbenu Uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha Uv'mitzvotecha leolam ba'ed Ki hem chayenu Ve'orech yameinu Uvahem negei yomam v'layla V'havatcha al tasir Mimenu leolamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael. On pages 152 through 154, we find, or 152 and 153, we find the Shema followed on 154 by the Ve'ahavta. I invite you to prepare yourself for these words of Torah. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha Bechol levavcha, uvechol nafshecha, uvechol meotecha, vehayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzavecha, hayom alevavecha, v'shrantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha havaderech, Uvshachcha, uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu latotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Leman tiskaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'hitem kedoshim Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti Edchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, v'hiyot lachem Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. Please be seated. And we continue together on page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. That wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt. That there is a better place, a promised land. That the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. That there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha neder bakodesh, no ratehilo dohosef eleh, Nora tehilo tosefele. Malechutecha ra'uvanecha bokeyayam lifnei Moshe ze'eli. Anu ve'ameru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha neder bakodesh. Nora tehilo tosefele, nora tehilo tosefele. Baruch atah Adonai Gaal Yisrael. Page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom alenu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. We come now to the central portion of our evening prayer. The Amidah begins on page 164 and continues over the next few pages. I invite you to prepare yourself for this set of blessings. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם לעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, בכמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. You may be seated. And we continue together on page 173. Disturb us, Adonai. Ruffle us from our complacency. Make us dissatisfied with the peace of ignorance, the quietude which arises from a shunning of the horror, the defeat, the bitterness and the poverty, physical and spiritual, of humans. Shock us, Adonai. Deny to us the false Shabbat which gives us the delusions of satisfaction amid a world of war and hatred. Wake us, O God, and shake us from the sweet and sad poignancies rendered by half-forgotten melodies and rubric prayers of yesteryears. Make us know that the border of the sanctuary is not the border of the living, and the walls of your temples are not shelters from the winds of truth, justice, and reality. Disturb us, O God, and vex us. Let not your Shabbat be a day of torpor and slumber. Let it be a time to be stirred and spurred to action. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 175. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai she'odcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'el lehodot. Page 178. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov benecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol et u'b'chol sha'a b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We take a moment now for silent prayer. You might use the words on pages 180 and 181 or the meditations of your own heart. Yehiyu l'ratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri v'goali, v'goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and redeemer. We turn our thoughts now to those who are ill or injured or recovering from surgeries and in need of our prayers for healing. We have on that list Grace Friend, Lori Perry, Nick Joliat, Rhonda Butler, Minna and Ira Dornfeld, Frank Lerner, Debbie Rubenstein, Josiah Miller, Jacob Asher, Ann Cohen, Anita Ash, Richard Blaylock, Patty Bergeron, Jed Michael, Kathy Katz, Rosalind Cantu, and Taliba Hassan. And if anyone else has a name that they would like to add at this time, please do so. And we hold in our hearts all those in need of healing of mind, body, and spirit. The Mishaberach is on page 371. Mishaberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha la'avotenu Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I'd also like to say a prayer for safety and health for those who have lost the right to certain medical procedures today. May you be safe. May a canopy of safety and peace, health and care cover you, despite everything you may now be forced to endure. May you find ways to own your body, your agency, and your dignity, despite everything the government has taken from you. May you be surrounded by a community of caring hands and loving hearts who can hold you. May you always know that you are holy, sacred, and your will, your autonomy matters and should be respected as such. May you be protected in all ways, able to weather the material, physical, emotional, and spiritual hardships that come your way. May you find within yourself resilience, strength, and bravery, and may you know that you are not alone. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Shalach, in which God instructs Moses to send forth 12 agents, one from each tribe, to scout out the promised land and the people who already live there. 10 of the 12 come back terrified of the prospect of conquering the land. They say that giants dwell there, and they bewail, again, ever having left Egypt, certain that they will die if they try to settle their new homeland. Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, are courageous enough to say that they believe in God's might and God's aid to their cause, and that they will indeed be successful in settling the bountiful land of giants and giant crops. The Haftarah parallels this story more neatly than many of the other parshiot and their accompanying readings from the prophets, as it tells of Joshua sending 2 spies of his own into Jericho, right as they are about to enter the land 40 years after the events of the Torah portion. Of course, in both the Torah and the Haftarah, the scouts or spies are men, but the true hero of the Haftarah is a woman. Rachav is identified as an Isha Zona, most often translated as a harlot, but also possibly an innkeeper or the madam of the house. In any case, she is an independent woman, which has always been treated as a danger to society. She makes her own decisions about her city, about the Israelites, and God, and assists Joshua in conquering Jericho, displacing the social order that cast her out into the outskirts of the city and the community. Literally the outskirts. She lived in the physical wall that surrounded the city. So if she didn't strike this deal with Joshua, she and her family would be the first to get knocked down as they siege the walls. And it is often the people on the margins like Rachav who see most clearly the injustices around us. Yesterday marked the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX, legislation that sought to fight discrimination on the basis of sex and gender in educational settings. Unfortunately, still these 50 years later, women, girls, and gender and sexual minorities continue to be marginalized on the basis of their supposed biology or gender presentation. Last week, a news story bemoaned the horrors of being canceled at 17 because a group of teenagers socially ostracized a classmate for sharing his girlfriend's nudes without her consent. Honestly, I'm a little concerned about how he didn't get into more substantial trouble for essentially having child porn on his phone, naked pictures of someone under 18. So a little social ostracization seems like he got off a little easy to me. But anyway, in the response to the news article about him, social media was flooded last week with stories of lists written in girls' bathrooms of boys to avoid and the hurt feelings of the boys who have lost access to the bodies that they feel entitled to. Though the original article by Elizabeth Whale was overwhelmingly considerate of the assaulters' points of view, it also gave fair voice to some of the dynamics at play and why girls and women feel more certain than ever that this is the time to speak up. For the high school students Whale interviewed, coming back into schools after a year or more of isolation and dealing with boundary violations for the first time in a while, or possibly ever, depending on their age, they realized that they really didn't have to live with those violations. That school without harassment was actually possible. It was possible with online classes. It should be possible in the physical classroom as well. And this was the time to push their administrators as much as their classmates to understand this. We were given the space and a lot of time, one girl reported to her school board in an attempt to rally more institutional support, to reflect on why that kind of behavior was tolerated at school. While Title IX is often cited in cases of collegiate sports or other sex-separated activities where girls are likely to be explicitly and institutionally excluded, cases in recent years throughout the country have successfully advocated for using the application of Title IX in the fight against sexual harassment and assault in schools. Women and girls cannot be expected to learn equally if they are busy fearing for their safety. Meanwhile, as women and girls are fighting for their rights to go to school without being touched against their will and to maintain their reasonable rights to privacy, the courts are stripping away the bodily autonomy of everyone with a uterus and will quite possibly soon extend such repressions to other sexual and gender minorities. I've spoken before about where Judaism stands on abortion and where Reform Judaism stands on equity for all, so I shouldn't need to explain how today's court rulings and the ones likely to follow violate our religious freedoms and values. It is a danger to our lives and our rights, and I am horrified for what it will mean for so many in our community. And these regressive laws will disproportionately affect those who are already additionally marginalized by factors other than sex and gender. People who live in poverty, people of color, people who live in underserved areas. They will be the first to be harmed by constrictions on their bodily autonomy. People like Rahav, who live on the outskirts, who see the harms caused by their societies, and whose lead we should be following when it comes time to fight for the freedom of all and a more equitable future. This Shabbat and always may we look to those on the margins for clarity in assessing the evils of our world. May we fight for and support the rights and safety of the marginalized. And may we always, always remember that each living human is responsible for their own body first and foremost. Each person has a right to decide how and when their own body is touched and by whom. Each person has the right to decide how and when to build their families and with whom. No person has the right to exert their sense of entitlement over someone else's living body and breathing soul. I pray for a safe and healthy future for us all, free to live our values and to be our authentic selves without fear of state repression. Amen and Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to close with another prayer by the National Council of Jewish Women. God of our ancestors, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, We affirm that you have created each of us in your sacred image, endowed with the inherent right to dignity and autonomy. We ask that you guide us toward a caring and loving community and nation that reveres this dignity in each of us. We affirm that reproductive freedom, the sacred right to own the personhood of one's own body, is a fundamental part of the just society for which we strive in your name. We ask that you endow us with the strength and resolve we need, because the path that lays ahead is challenging, and we all need resilience, strength, and courage. We ask that you protect the most impacted and marginalized among us, because it is they who are most at risk. We do this work in your name, O God, because we are the compassionate, loving creations of a compassionate, loving, and just God, and it is holy, sacred work. May our country become a place of liberty and justice for all, and may our care for one another include care and respect for each other's right to good and affordable health care, including reproductive health care and abortion. The right to live safely and securely as we each follow our path of conscience and the God we each do or do not believe in. Amen. We turn to our closing prayers now with the Aleinu on page 586. And I invite you to prepare yourself for the ark to be opened. Aleinu l'shabach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, לגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated. And we turn our thoughts now to those who are no longer with us in body, but remain with us in spirit. This week marks a yahrzeit for Albert Sacken, Esther Gonick, Helen Cohen, and Marion Max. And we're still within a year of mourning for Herbert Levy, Gary Sullivan, Debbie Taylor Wright, Mark Anderson, Samuel Fallis, Elaine Skolnick, Edith Herman, Phyllis Rosen, Jill Rosen, Dr. Jack Schuber, and Aaron Scanlon. And if anyone else has a name they'd like to add, please do so. The Mourners' Kaddish is on page 598. Mourners and those who wish to join them may rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudesha b'rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, Damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlam araba min shemaya v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You may be seated. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 V'imru amen. A few announcements before we end. Tomorrow is Saturday. Nothing. Sunday is our general membership meeting. We are meeting on Zoom at 10 a.m. If you are a member of Congregation Ner Shalom, you should have gotten the Zoom link in your email this week. And if you did not, email Heidi, I think is the right point person. Yes, I'm getting nods. Email Heidi Milgram. Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m., there is still adult ed. We are continuing our study of Talmud. We're jumping a bit to Yevamot, the section that is being read by people who read a page a day on the regular cycle, yeshiva buchers everywhere. We'll be doing a little bit of that tomorrow, or Sunday, so it should be interesting. Wednesday is our book club meeting. This week, or this month, we read The Rabbi's Wife, the Bishop's Wife. It's not a great book, but we're going to discuss it anyway. Wednesday at 10:30 on Zoom. Join us if you read it. And then next Friday is our inaugural Young Adult Shabbat. So if you are between the ages of 18 and 25-ish, or you know someone who is, invite them for Friday at 7 p.m. We're going to have a potluck and campfire and some networking type things. And then Saturday morning will be a regular service open to everyone at 10 a.m. next Saturday morning. Okie dokie. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We're trying to be very cautious with COVID still. Not doing onegs, but please, we'll cut up some slices you can take with you at the very, very end. The te'avon. It's now blessed, so take it with you. And our final song to close with will be Adon Olam on page 625. Adon Olam asher malach B'terem kol yitzir nivra Li'e nasa v'chevtza kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol Yetzir nivra. Ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora. Vehu haya vehu hoveh Vehu hiye betifara. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol Yetzir nivra. Vehu echad ve'ein sheni lehamshilo behachbira. Beli reshit, beli tachlit, velo ha'oz ve'hamisra. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol Yetzir nivra. Vehu eli v'chai goali, Betzor chavli beitzara. Vehu nisi umanosli, Menat kosi beyom ekra. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol Yetzir nivra. Bi'ado afkid ruchi be'et ishan ve'a'ira. Ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol Yetzir nivra. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.